I'm J.R. Church. Welcome to today's webcast. It's April 28th, and I want you to meet this man. There's just a picture of him. His name is Geert Wilders. He's a Dutch member of Parliament from Europe. Came to the United States recently to give a speech at the Four Seasons Hotel in New York. And here's what he had to say. Listen carefully. I come to America with a mission. All is not well in the old world. There is a tremendous danger looming. It's very difficult to be optimistic. We might be in the final stages of the Islamization of Europe. This is not only a clear and present danger to the future of Europe itself, it's a threat to America and the sheer survival of the West. The United States, as the last bastion of Western civilization, is facing an Islamic Europe. First, I'll describe the situation on the ground in Europe. You have probably seen the landmarks, but in all of the cities, sometimes there's a few blocks away from your tourist destination, there is another world, a world of the parallel society created by Muslims' mass migration. All throughout Europe, a new reality is rising in entire Muslim neighborhoods where very few indigenous people reside or are even seen. If they are, they might regret it. This goes for the police as well. It's a world of headscarves where women walk around in figureless tents with baby strollers and a group of children. Their husbands or slaveholders, if you prefer, walk 3 steps ahead. With mosques on many street corners, the shops have signs you and I cannot read. They will be hard-pressed to find any economic activity. These are Muslim ghettos controlled by religious fanatics. These are Muslim neighborhoods. They are mushrooming in every city across Europe. These are the building blocks for territorial control of increasingly larger portions of Europe, street by street, neighborhood by neighborhood, city by city. There are now thousands of mosques throughout Europe, and with larger congregations than there are in churches. And in every European city, there are plans to build super mosques that will dwarf every church in the region. Clearly, the signal is, we rule. Many European cities are already 1/4 Muslim. Just take Amsterdam or Marseille or Malmo in Sweden. And many cities, the majority of under 18 population is Muslim. Paris is now surrounded by a ring of Muslim neighborhoods. Mohammed is the most popular name among boys in many cities. In some elementary schools in Amsterdam, the farm can no longer be mentioned because it will also mean mentioning the pig, and that would be an insult to Muslims. Many state schools in Belgium and Denmark only serve halal food to all pupils. In once tolerant Amsterdam, gays are beaten up almost exclusively by Muslims. Non-Muslim women routinely wear or hear the word whore. Satellite dishes are not pointed to local TV stations, but stationed in the country of origin. In France, school teachers are advised to avoid authors deemed offensive to Muslims, including Voltaire and Diderot, and the same is increasingly true of Darwin. The history of the Holocaust can no longer be taught because of Muslim sensitivity. In England, Sharia courts are now officially part of the British legal system. Many neighborhoods in France are no-go areas for women without headscarves. Last week, a man almost died after being beaten up by Muslims in Brussels because he was drinking during Ramadan. Jews are fleeing Europe in record numbers on the run for the worst wave of anti-Semitism since World War II. French is now commonly spoken on the streets of Tel Aviv and Netanya, Israel. I could go on forever with stories like this, stories about Islamization. A total of 54 million Muslims now live in Europe. San Diego University recently calculated that a staggering 25% of the population of Europe will be Muslim in just 12 years from now. Bernhard Lewis has predicted a Muslim majority by the end of this century. Now, these are just numbers, and the numbers would not be threatening if the Muslim immigrants had a strong desire to assimilate, but there are a few signs of that. The Pew Research Center reported that half of the French Muslims see their loyalty to Islam as greater than their loyalty to France. 1/3 of French Muslims do not object to suicide attacks. The British Center for Social Cohesion reported that 1/3 of British Muslim students are in favor of a worldwide caliphate. Muslims demand what they call respect. And this is how we give them respect. We have Muslim official state holidays. The Christian Democratic Attorney General is willing to accept Sharia in the Netherlands if there is a Muslim majority. We have cabinet members with passports from Morocco and Turkey. Muslim demands are supported by unlawful behavior ranging from petty crimes to random violence, for example, against ambulance workers and bus drivers, to small-scale riots. Paris has seen its uprising in the low-income suburbs. I call the perpetrators settlers because that's what they are. They do not come to integrate into our societies. They come to integrate our society into their Dar al-Islam. Therefore, they are settlers. Much of the street violence I mention is directly, exclusively against non-Muslims, forcing many native people to leave their neighborhoods, their cities, their countries. Moreover, Muslims are now a swing vote, not to be ignored. The second thing you need to know is the importance of Muhammad the Prophet. His behavior is an example to all Muslims and cannot be criticized. If Muhammad had been a man of peace, let's say like Gandhi or Mother Teresa wrapped up in one, there would be no problem. But Muhammad was a warlord, a mass murderer, a pedophile, and had several marriages at the same time. Islamic tradition tells us how he fought in battles and how his enemies were murdered, even had prisoners of war executed. Muhammad himself slaughtered the Jewish people of the Banu Qurayza. If it's good for Islam, it's good. If it's bad for Islam, it's bad. Let no one fool you about Islam being a religion. Sure, it has a God and a hereafter and 72 virgins. And its essence, Islam is a political ideology. It is a system that lays down detailed rules for society and the life of every person. Islam wants to dictate every aspect of life. Islam means submission. Islam is not compatible with freedom and democracy because it strives for its Sharia. If you want to compare Islam to anything, compare it to communism or National Socialism. These are all totalitarian ideologies. Now, you know why Winston Churchill called Islam, quote, the most retrograde force in the world, end quote, and why he compared Mein Kampf, that's a book written by Adolf Hitler, to the Quran. The public has wholeheartedly accepted the Palestinian narrative and sees Israel as the aggressor. I have lived in this country and visited several dozens of times. I support Israel, first because it's the Jewish homeland after 2,000 years of exile, up to and including Auschwitz. Second, because it is a democracy. And third, because Israel is our first line of defense. This tiny country is situated on the fault line of jihad, frustrating Islam's territorial advance. Israel is facing the front lines of jihad like Kashmir, Kosovo, and the Philippines, southern Thailand, Darfur in Sudan, Lebanon, and Aceh in Indonesia. Israel is simply in the way, the same way West Berlin was during the Cold War. The war against Israel is not a war against Israel, it's a war against the West. It is jihad. Israel is simply receiving the blows that are meant for all of us. If there would have been no Israel, Islamic imperialism would have found other venues to release its energy and its desires for conquest. Thanks to Israeli parents who send their children to the army and lay awake at night, parents in Europe and America can sleep well and dream unaware of the dangers looming. Many in Europe argue in favor of abandoning Israel in order to address the grievances of our Muslim minorities. But if Israel were, God forbid, to go down, it would not bring any solace to the West. It would mean that our Muslim minorities would all of a sudden change their behavior and accept our values. On the contrary, the end of Israel would give enormous encouragement to the forces of Islam. They would, and rightly so, seek the demise of Israel as proof that the West is weak and doomed. The end of Israel would not mean the end of our problems with Islam, but only the beginning. It would mean the start of the final battle for world domination. If they can get Israel, they can get everything. So-called journalists volunteer to label any and all critics of Islamization as right-wing extremists or racists. In my country, in the Netherlands, 60% of the population now sees the mass migration of Muslims as the number one policy mistake since World War II. And another 60% sees Islam as the biggest threat. Yet there is a greater danger than terrorist attacks. The scenario of America is the last man standing. The lights may go out in Europe faster than you can imagine. And Islamic Europe means a Europe without freedom and democracy, and an economic wasteland, an intellectual nightmare, and a loss of military might for America, as its allies will turn into enemies with atomic bombs. With an Islamic Europe, it would be up to America alone to preserve the heritage of Rome, Athens, and Jerusalem. Dear friends, liberty is the most precious of gifts. My generation never fought for this freedom. It was offered to us on a silver platter by people who fought for it all their lives. All throughout Europe, American cemeteries remind us of the young boys who never made it home and whose memories we cherish. My generation does not go down on this does not own this freedom. We are merely custodians. We can only hand it over to our children in the same state it was offered to us. We have to take this necessary action now to stop the Islamic stupidity from destroying the free world as we know it. Quite a speech. Enough said. I'm J.R. Church. We'll see you again tomorrow with our analysis of the news.